Blessed day. Welcome back. Martial Mystic Calendar Series 2026. And it is Taiji Tuesday today. And this week we are discussing the case for slowing down. Why would we want to slow down? What are the pros and the cons? What are the systems for slowing down that we can follow? And why can't we just get things done and get them done quickly? Yesterday we talked about and we introduced the Tai Chi concept and the mental health aspect from the bottom-up approach that is discussed in mental health, that is in contrast to thinking and improving mental health through thinking, rather influencing the body in a way that produces mental wellness. So if you already have some sort of movement-based practice, skill, hobby, what have you, you know that there's an aspect to feeling good, which is what we call the quality of qi, to your your craft, your skill, your practice, your sport, what have you. And in Qigong, we we talk about the quality of qi and the quantity of qi, and we utilize movement, repetition, and coordinated breath work to create conditions for physical and mental and spiritual well-being. So we're going to be teasing out these ideas this week, today particularly with Tai Chi Chuan. Remember, we're wondering what are the systems, right? So Tai Chi Chuan can give us opportunities to slow down and invoke the benefits of slowing down. And oftentimes in martial arts, there's critique and criticism of the concept of slowing down. Why would you want to slow down when someone is not going to attack you in a slow way, but rather in a fast way? And so for practitioners, they know that in order to be able to become proficient and skilled, you have to break things down and you have to slow down to build up each piece of the body, the technique, and and then once you have that, you can start to try to utilize that, learning timing and distance and pacing and to build the skill. Because in something like Tai Chi Chuan, you have theory and application. This is how I think it might go, and then when you try it, this is how it goes. And so the today's topic is about the time and the space illusion and what can become available to us if we follow the principles of Taiji Chuan and Qigong in the ways that are sort of spelled out, at least as far as what I've learned and from what the classics tell us. So this brings us to our poetry of the day for June 16th. And it goes like this: substantial and insubstantial should be clearly distinguished. Every part of the body has a substantial and insubstantial aspect to it. The entire body and all of the joints should be threaded together without the slightest break. So there's a few things here. The substantial and insubstantial. Every part of the body has substantial and insubstantial. And if you recall, we have learned that the scholars introduced to us a material aspect of existence and an immaterial aspect of existence, right? Yin and yang. So just in that, we already see how substantial and insubstantial come into play. You have a physical life that you can see, touch, sense, right, through the five senses. And then you have an immaterial aspect of life, your running thoughts, your feelings and emotions that arise or respond to the external world or the internal world. You have your like dreams when you're sleeping. You have um, what we call the yin aspect of life and living and existence. But then when we look at movements and Taiji Chuan practice and learning, we break down the body into like upper body, lower body, yin and yang, or left leg and right leg, another yin and yang, left hand, right, yin and yang. But what it mostly dictates is the function. For example, in this case, when you're looking at the left leg and the right leg, they're pretty much balanced. In this stance called Ding Sampu, mountain climbing stance, you want 50% of the weight on one leg, 50% of the weight on the other leg. In that case, yin and yang are balanced. In um, other cases and other stances, you have a different percentage distributed within the legs. And then same thing with the hands. If one hand's pulling, it could be yin or yang based on the other hand pushing, right? So this is helpful in understanding substantial and insubstantial, right? Because in this case, the white is normally characterized as substantial. And and it's relative. So if we're talking about material, the material world, the yang, the yin and yang of the material world is that which you can see and touch. So that would be the white. And then what you can't touch is the black, right? Mind and let's say mind and gut or upper energy center, lower energy center. So upper energy center, you could say relative to spirit is more of the black and the immaterial. Um, in contrast to the lower energy center and its ability to take food and make it into energy for the body. So that would be more substantial. And the sort of spirit aspect, the upper energy center, would be insubstantial, right? So let's take a look at this outline that I drew up um, just to kind of help us go through what we're talking about. So the case for slowing down time and space, the Tai Chi journey, right? So in Chinese martial arts, and in Qigong and Tai Chi, there's four schools of Qigong. And those are the medical, the scholar, the martial, and the spiritual schools of Qigong. And Chinese martial arts falls into the martial Qigong school. As I've mentioned before, the schools and the principles and the techniques can overlap. And we'll see that here in a second with Tai Chi Chuan. With martial Qigong, we have um, martial arts styles, including Tai Chi Chuan, which is an internal martial arts style, right? Particularly in Chinese martial arts, Wusu is translated as stopping the weapon. That is an aspect and a principle of Chinese martial arts to stop the weapon. Another aspect of Chinese martial arts is morality of mind and deed, which comes from the moralities, the martial moralities and the Tao Te Ching. We also have the building of the resilience of mind and body as a pursuit of Chinese martial arts. So now you start to see the like this in terms of resilience of the mind. You could say that's a little bit of the scholar Qigong school, right? So Kung Fu, a lot of times people will say that Kung Fu is Chinese martial arts, but Kung Fu is a skill that is required over time. And that brings us to regulation and repetition, because in order to acquire the proficiency and the skill, we need the repetition. We talked about that yesterday in Mental Health Monday and the case for slowing down, in the sense that when we have a skill to acquire or something that we've just learned and we need to remember and uptake it in a quick way, then we'll have to increase the repetitions, increase the data into the body, so actually do it and have that those aspects of repetition and regulation. When you're taking yourself to do something, that can be um, called regulation. You're regulating your learning and your proficiency. You have also reflection as a part of that process, and then um, and then a and then a recycling of the regulation and repetition. So we have the five regulations and what I like to call the Qigong triad. So the triad begins with the body, the breath, and the mind. A simple way to start with anything that you're really wanting to learn, because a lot of the things that you want to learn, there's gonna be some sort of body aspect to it, because you have to use your body. You have to Now here, when you're doing something and learning something, you'll want to incorporate breath regulation so that you can settle into a pace of regulation and repetition. And the mind here is our bridge. The mind is sort of the general that connects the body and the breath and sustains that connection. And then finally, which includes the five regulations, the chi and the spirit. You can start to move the chi, and then here spirit gets involved in the sense that you can code into your DNA. You can code into what we might call the essence or the spirit of yourself and your DNA, and then your um, energetic blueprint, if you will. So the some aspects of Chinese martial arts in this context, we could say are hard and soft and slow and fast. And these two simple or four simple terms can help us to dictate how we're going to uh, issue power, apply power, diffuse power, interface with power, how we use energy, how we conserve energy, how we recoup energy, and then whenever we have an idea or something in the mind, how we manifest it into a physical realm. So, in order to manifest, we have to address blockage and stagnation, right? In the body, when we're doing Tai Chi Chuan, when we're doing the movement, we want to clear stagnation and any blockage so that we can have smooth energy flow, which contributes to the goal of Qigong, quality of energy. So when you do your hobby, or when you're practicing your skill, your martial arts, or you're doing your singing or guitar, what have you, and you're doing your repetitions, your skills, your drills, your scales, what have you, that is all um, sort of polishing, is one way of saying it, is what we like to say, like polishing the stone, but that also clearing blockage and stagnation that gets in the way. If I'm trying to learn a chord or a strum, um, getting proficient in moving the fingers on the neck of the guitar to satisfy the sound that we're looking for. And that circulation and flow that is built and accumulated is essentially going to create the conditions for proficiency. You can think of skill or proficiency as smooth circulation, smooth flow of mind and body in harmony. And then these is what we would say are the beginning of the conditions for well-being, or as mentioned, applying a skill. So how would we do that? The mind and the attention and the focus. Remember that mind is part of the Qigong triad and the five regulations, right? So there's yin and yang of mind, right? We could say like there's when you try to focus or concentrate hard, that's the yang of mind. If there's a passive sort of just kind of listening, we could say that's a yin of mind, right? We don't really want the extremes, but we want a happy harmony of both. So there's some different ways that we can look at how we attend to the yin and yang and the attention and focus and apply that because we're here now in the yin dimension when we're talking about mind. We have to define mind, which we've done in the past um, in Mental Health Mondays. Briefly, we talk about mind as a embodied and emergent process that helps to process energy and information internally and externally. And then we also talk about how mind, in terms of interpersonally, can uh, be beyond the skin of the body, where, for example, um, child and parent share a mind as the child is being reared by the parent. There's a mind that's being shared as energy and information flow is coming from the parent down to the child. There's a shared aspect of mind, right? So if you kind of think about that, um, and also how you apply focus and attention in the internal body. For example, you can think of putting your attention on your right hand and you open and close it, and you're conscious of that. But if you start to open and close your left hand, are you able to be conscious of both of those? Let's say you do one faster than the other. So you start to split the mind and the attention. And let's say you wanted to do like a maybe a sort of a pacing 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the other hand you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're kind of challenging the mind, if you will, like rubbing the belly and tapping the head at the same time. But what I wanted to do is just kind of give some of the uh, metaphors by which we can try to understand how we talk about mind, attention, and focus like a spotlight. So, for example, you are doing, a spring Qigong movement and you have your mind on the liver, kind of like a spotlight, or a beam of awareness, kind of like a spotlight or a beam that your attention and awareness can follow. Because where the mind goes, energy flows. We've heard of Wheel of Awareness from Dan Siegel in terms of you have this sort of clock figure, and then you have all these aspects of internal and external existence where you can put your attention on any parts of the wheel through a scope. The zoom lens is interesting because you can put your attention on your leg, your whole leg, let's say your right leg, but then you can zoom in onto your thigh muscle, or you can zoom in onto your knee muscle, or you can zoom in into the cartilage in your knee joint. Another metaphor is the cursor or the dimmer switch, which I kind of like the dimmer switch because um, you can turn the light on a little higher or bring down the dimmer. Okay. So that is gonna now bring us to what is the goal of Taiji Chuan when we're here talking about slowing down and the case for slowing down. So the final goal for Taiji Chuan practice is to harmonize your energy with the energy of the natural universe as laid out in um, YMAA publications by my teacher, Dr. Yang. In order to achieve this goal, you must regulate your spirit to a firm, strong, peaceful, and enlightened state. So, what the heck does that mean, though? What does that look like in the body to harmonize your energy with the energy of the natural universe? Or to regulate your spirit to a strong, peaceful, and enlightened state? Right? What does it look like to do that? If you were to go, okay, I'm going to regulate my spirit to a strong, peaceful, enlightened state and say, I'm going to practice this for the rest of my life, what would that look like? Right? And so that brings us to the Taiji Chuan movements, or that brings us to the Qigong movements. In this particular case, and in this book, as I've laid out, you have what's called the yin yang symbol. So, with the intention of harmonizing with the energy of the natural universe, right? You have your mind and your attention and your focus on that goal. Now you apply these movements, these simple S movements, and you can see that the S is part of the yin yang symbol, right? The yin yang symbol being a natural part of ener nature's energetic pattern and blueprint, right? Because so if you want to harmonize with the energy of nature, well, you want to follow the patterns of nature. So what we learn in Tai Chi Chuan is the patterns of nature come from the circle, the spiral, and the yin yang, right? Which represent very sacred aspects of being and existence, right? So to do a movement in a yin yang way, that could mean so many different things. So for example, that could mean harmonizing upper body and lower body, or it could mean harmonizing the whole body with a mental focus. You have those two cases as being two cases of yin and yang, right? But then you have this spiral pattern. How do you do this spiral pattern? How do you um, use that to harmonize with nature, to connect with nature? So connecting with nature is kind of like a big, probably a movement health and wellness these days. Connecting with nature, taking a walk in nature, touching grass, grounding, breathing fresh air. Uh, could be a shower, or it could be a bath or something like that. All of those things that help to shift your quality of energy, the quality of experience, maybe your state of consciousness, right? And then there's the circle, the Wu Ji, which compared to these other patterns represents source, origin, and essentially mother energy, the grand uh, potential of existence that is essentially, and is sometimes often referred to as the Tao, right? And then so using these, remember, theory and application, right? Using these theories, trying to apply and practice them to achieve yin yang of self, essentially balance and harmony of mind and body. So now we get to what we call the case for slowing down. How the heck do you know if you're achieving any of these things if you decide to uh, pursue this path of what some may call proficiency, liberation, enlightenment, right? So the important thing about this and Taiji Chuan and practice is that it's not necessarily an intellectual thing. It's an experiential thing. You have to do the movements and then you have to see how your nervous system responds and how your mind, body, breath, and spirit and energy responds. And then you modify it and then return to the practice and do it again. It simply is another version of the yin yang. So four phases of yin and yang, right? Early to late to peak, right? So you're doing a movement, you have it reaches its peak, and then you have to always return to center. The movement recycles where there's uh, a culmination of what you've learned, the data, and then how are you going to use that information to modify your movement, right? Which takes you now to doing the movement again, what you learned along the way, and then how you modify it, and then you have another repetition. And so the cycle continues on and on and on, right? But when we start to slow down and when we start to appreciate the movement or the quality of energy or the benefits, then we start to have a different experience. Here we can go from regulating without regulating, and it becomes ingrained in the body, in the muscle memory. And now you start to have this aspect of doing and practice and repetition where you're gaining and you're learning and you build momentum. So that's why practice and discipline are key, and daily uh, practice is always sort of suggested and really demanded by, your teacher, so that you continue to, remember polishing that stone or that rock. In this figure here, what I wanted to mention was the nature of the spiral. Okay, so the nature of the spiral here we could see is vertical as well. And so when let's talk about slowing down and speeding up. If we spiral in a way that we speed up, we in a way go from, center here. If we're trying to go from this point A to this point B, and we just go in a straight line, we miss the path of the circle and the spiral to get there. So you could go from the bottom of a hill to the top of a hill in one straight line, but it may be too steep or you may not have the leg strength. So you'll have to do it in switchbacks where you go up at an angle, switch back to maintain the center, and then cross through center, switch back, and then that will get you up the mountain. So that's one way of kind of thinking about spiral and ascending or descending, right? Another way to think about this here is looking at the brainwave states, and when we do Qigong, how we want to influence and facilitate the theta shift. So the theta shift is that quality of being and in the body where you're relaxed or even so relaxed that you're in a semi-sleep state. That's the quality of being that you want to have when you're doing Qigong and Tai Chi Chuan. You don't want to be doing it in a rushed state, an anxious state, an emotional state. Um, in fact, those can be harmful to yourself. So imagine getting so angry that you punch a brick wall. Well, you hurt yourself because all of that emotion and energy went into the 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 brick wall. In martial arts, what we would do, or in martial qigong, we would slowly tap away to to condition the body to sustain some sort of blow like that. Okay. But when you do and go through a process like that, you understand and you interface in the external world and you learn the value of giving and taking and exchanging energy. You know that that brick wall is going to hit you back in a way that's going to produce a lot of pain, right? Another way of thinking about the spiral here is is in that way the relaxed state, the theta state, right? Because you can't exactly go from a rushed, anxious state to a relaxed, calm state, can you? So try to think about that the next time you're rushing around, right? Or you're rushing home or you're rushing to somewhere. Oftentimes, people will rush to their Tai Chi class or their Qigong class, and then it takes a while to down regulate and to get into the body and then to start to even do the movements. It could take 20 to 30 minutes to do that. You don't, and you want to have that experience and that feeling. You want to take the time. That's actually how you prepare and you prepare the conditions to gain from slowing down. And in fact, that is the function of slowing down. So one of the things that my teacher would always say is always search for the deeper feeling. And so here's where I would say now we can start to get into the mysticism of the slowing down and the function of slowing down. And a little bit what we could do is look at nature and we can look at the spirals in nature and try to look at, so let's say for example here, the sunflower, right? So the sunflower, you could trace a line almost to the middle and you could see the spiral. But there are other sort of images where you can't really, you sort of wonder, where does the spiral end? Where does the spiral really end? And perhaps it ends in a space and in a place where we can't really see, right? And that's sort of the mystery of nature too, in and of itself, right? So if we look for spirals in nature, that's one of the that's one of the aspects of, well, where where is the end point or where is the beginning point? So for example, I'm looking at this, let's see, they call it the fractal foundation. Or here's a nice image right here. You can, there's this process by which you can trace, in a way, your eye or your finger to a certain extent to the center of the plant, but only to a certain extent that either the sense of touch or the sense of sight has a limit. But in a way, when you think about the spiral and this plant, there actually is no limit by which that spiral uh, has. And in a way, it starts to spiral into the realm of the unseen. So here we could see a beautiful display of the spiral in this plant and the nature and how it's um, manifested in the physical world. What we could also say that, like roots in a tree, there's a there's a symmetrical spiral to the unseen eye uh, within this plant. I mean, here's another one. So that helps us to kind of embrace the mystery of nature, embrace also the fact that we are part of nature, and then also give a little color to that pursuit, right? To harmonizing your energy with with the energy of the natural universe. So if we slow down, then we can start to transcend how we're sensing and feeling the body in a physical way and possibly go to that state of transparency that Taiji is looking for. And actually, it's one of the things that my teacher guides us through and to is the transparency of the physical body. What does that mean? That means that you've transcended to the energetic state outside of the physical body, which is inside. Well, what I'm saying is transcending outside of the physical sensation of the body into the energetic sensation of the body. But that only can be achieved if we're willing to slow down. And I would venture to say that any other hobby, skill, sport, or practice that you're doing, if you're able to find the space, the place, the appreciation for slowing down, you start to enter a realm where you start to feel and sense things differently. And then that is going to have its own influence on your skill, craft, activity, hobby, what have you. So here what you would be doing is theoretically applying the Tai Chi principle or a principle of the Tao through Tai Chi for the sake or for the benefit of, whatever uh, skill, craft, sport, hobby you're trying to achieve. So we'll talk about tomorrow the wellness aspect of this more, but I wanted to outline here and get a little bit deeper into the Tai Chi Chuan aspect of it. So remember to embrace the Wu and may your Qi flow